A frail teenage girl sits on a park bench, her fingers gripping a paintbrush like a lifeline, the colors on her canvas burst with life, a stark contrast to the battle raging inside her. She has cancer, and the chemo costs are drowning her single mother in debt. She has no choice but to sell her paintings, hoping that anyone will stop and buy one. Her mother works two jobs, barely making enough to cover rent and food, much less the mounting medical bills. Every day the girl watches her mother come home exhausted, her shoulders slumped, her eyes heavy with worry and guilt, because no parent wants to feel helpless when their child is sick. But the reality is cruel, and the only thing the girl can do to help is paint. She has been painting since she was old enough to hold a brush. At first, it was just a hobby, something she did for fun. Then it became a passion, a way to express herself, and now it is a necessity, her only weapon against a disease that does not care about dreams or talent or how much someone wants to live. Her paintings are vibrant, full of energy, a reflection of the life she refuses to let go of. But the world is not always kind, and so far most people who walk past her little makeshift stand glance at her work, then keep moving. Some offer polite smiles, others do not even acknowledge her at all. The wind picks up, rustling the edges of her paintings taped to a wooden easel. She tucks a strand of her thinning hair behind her ear. She can feel the weakness in her arms, the fatigue settling into her bones. But she pushes through, dabbing her brush into a mixture of blues and purples, creating a swirling sky on the canvas. She does not let herself think about what will happen if she does not sell anything today. She just keeps painting because that is all she can do. An older couple stops for a moment, admiring a piece she painted of a sunset over the ocean. The woman tilts her head considering it, while the man checks his watch, impatience clear on his face. She holds her breath, waiting, hoping. Finally the man shrugs, and they walk away without a word. The girl exhales, slowly forcing herself to stay calm. But the frustration is building. She has been out here for hours, and she has not made a single sale. She looks around at the busy park. People are laughing, walking their dogs, drinking coffee from paper cups. They are lost in their own worlds, their own problems. She wonders if any of them have ever felt this kind of desperation, the kind that claws at your throat and makes it hard to breathe, the kind that turns every passing minute into a ticking clock counting down to something you do not want to face. She grips her brush tighter, a sudden burst of determination pushing through the exhaustion. If no one is going to stop, she will make them notice her. She dips her brush into red, bold and striking, and begins painting over the sky she just created, turning it into something more powerful, something that demands attention. Her hands move faster, the colors blending together into something raw, something full of emotion. She does not even realize she is crying until a tear drops onto the canvas, mixing with the paint. But she does not stop, she cannot stop. A little girl with pigtails tugs at her mother's hand, pointing at the painting wide-eyed. The mother crouches down, whispering something to her daughter before standing and walking over to the stand. "How much is this one?" the woman asks, gesturing to a painting of a tree with golden leaves. The girl blinks, surprised by the question. She quickly wipes at her cheeks, forcing a smile. $50, she says hesitantly, hoping it is not too much. The woman nods, pulling cash from her purse and handing it over. The girl carefully wraps the painting, handing it to the little girl, who grins, clutching it tightly. "Thank you," she whispers. The girl watches them walk away, her chest tight with emotion. It is just one sale, but it is something. The sun begins to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park. She knows she should pack up soon. Her mother will worry if she stays too late. But she does not want to leave yet. She wants to believe that today will still bring another miracle. She takes a deep breath, sitting back, straightening her paintings one more time. She does not know it yet, but something incredible is about to happen, something that will change everything. Hour after hour, people walk by, glancing at her work, but few stop. A businessman in a sharp suit pauses for a moment, his eyes scanning the paintings with mild interest. She holds her breath, waiting, hoping he will say something. Finally, he points at one, a landscape of a quiet mountain covered in mist. "How much?" he asks. She forces her voice to stay steady. $50, she says. He lets out a short laugh, shaking his head before muttering, "Too much for this," and walking away. She watches him disappear into the crowd, the rejection stinging more than she wants to admit. She does not understand people spend money on coffee, on expensive shoes, on things they do not even need. But when it comes to art, when it comes to something made with heart and soul, they hesitate as if it is not worth it, as if it does not matter. She clenches her fists, forcing herself to breathe deeply, reminding herself that not everyone will appreciate what she does, but someone will, someone has to. A woman in a bright red coat stops next, tilting her head. As she studies a painting of a field of wildflowers, the girl sits up straighter, her heart pounding. She can tell the woman likes it. Her fingers twitch as if she wants to reach out and touch the colors. Her lips part slightly as if she is about to speak. But then she sighs, shaking her head. I love it, she says softly, but I just don't have the space for it. She smiles apologetically and walks away. The girl swallows hard, pushing back the lump in her throat. She refuses to let this break her. She picks up her brush, determined to keep going, determined to finish another piece. Before the sun sets, the bristles glide across the canvas, smooth and familiar, like an old friend. She lets her emotions pour into the colors, letting the frustration and the fear and the hope blend together in every stroke. As she paints, she barely notices a teenage boy standing nearby watching her. He has earbuds in and his hoodie is pulled up, but his eyes are locked on the canvas. After a moment, he pulls out his phone, snaps a quick photo, and walks away. She does not think much of it. She is too focused on her work, too lost in the world she is creating. The sky shifts from bright blue to warm orange as the sun lowers behind the trees. The park is quieter now, fewer people passing by. She is tired, so tired. But she does not want to leave, not yet. Maybe just a little longer, maybe one more sail, maybe one more person will stop and see her, really see her. Then she hears a voice, deep and unmistakable. How much for all of them? She freezes her brush, hovering mid-stroke. She slowly lifts her head and sees him standing there, tall and broad shoulders, silver hair, sharp eyes filled with something unreadable. Clint Eastwood, the legend himself, standing in front of her, looking at her paintings, looking at her like she is someone worth noticing. The world around her seems to stop. The few people still in the park begin whispering excitedly. Phones come out, cameras click, but she barely registers any of it. She can barely think, let alone speak. She blinks several times, convinced she is imagining this, convinced that the exhaustion is making her see things. But no, he is still there, waiting for an answer. All of them, she echoes, her voice barely above a whisper. He nods, his expression unreadable. How much? She swallows hard, her mind racing. She has no idea what to say. She does not even know how to process this. She glances at her paintings, scattered across the small stand, at the ones propped against the tree, at the ones taped to the easel. The total would be a few hundred, maybe. But before she can even open her mouth, he pulls out a thick envelope and hands it to her. Her fingers shake as she takes it. She looks down, opening it slightly, and what she sees makes her breath hitch. Cash, a lot of cash, far more than the worth of the paintings, far more than she ever expected. She looks back up at him, her eyes wide with shock. He offers a small smile. Just keep painting, kid. Suddenly a kind stranger buys a painting, then another. Within minutes, a small crowd gathers. Someone pulls out their phone and records her story. A local news channel picks it up that night. The city watches in awe as her heartbreaking yet beautiful struggle plays out on their screens. The next morning, people rush to the park, hoping to support her. But what happens next, no one could have predicted. She barely sleeps that night, still in shock from what happened. The envelope of cash Clint Eastwood handed her sits on the nightstand, untouched, as if moving it would break the spell. She had counted it 3 times, unable to believe the number. Enough for chemo, enough for rent, enough to keep them afloat. Her mother cried when she saw it, holding her tight, whispering thank you over and over as if she had performed some kind of miracle. The next morning she wakes to the sound of her phone buzzing non-stop. Confused, she reaches for it only to see hundreds of notifications. Social media is flooded with her story, photos of her paintings, videos of Clint Eastwood standing at her little art stand, posts from strangers praising her resilience and talent. She stares at the screen, trying to process it, her heart pounding as realization hits. People know who she is now. Her story is out there. Her mother rushes into the room, breathless, eyes wide with disbelief. We have to go outside right now, she says, pulling the girl out of bed. She barely has time to throw on a hoodie before she steps out the door and freezes reporters, cameras, neighbors, people she has never seen before, all waiting outside their tiny apartment. The moment they see her, the questions start. How do you feel about Clint Eastwood buying your paintings? What will you do next? Do you have more art for sale? She stammers, trying to find words, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she sees a woman stepping forward holding something in her hands, a check. She says softly, handing it to the girl, "My husband and I saw your story, and we want to help." Her mother gasps, taking the check and staring at the amount. Another man steps forward, handing her an envelope. "We believe in you, kid. Keep painting." It does not stop. More people come forward, some offering money, others asking to buy her art. Businesses reach out, offering supplies. A local gallery owner invites her to display her work. She can barely keep up, her head spinning from the flood of kindness. It is too much, too fast. Her hands shake as she clutches the envelope from Eastwood, still in her hoodie pocket, like an anchor in the chaos. Later that day, as she sits in her small apartment, trying to make sense of everything, her phone buzzes. Again, an unknown number. She hesitates before answering. "Hello," a deep voice replies. "Is this the young artist from the park?" She grips the phone tighter, recognizing the voice instantly. "Clint Eastwood." She stumbles over her words. "Yes, I mean, yes, sir, it's me." She hears a chuckle on the other end. "No need to call me sir," he says, "just wanted to check and see how you're holding up." She takes a shaky breath, forcing herself to stay calm. She thanks him again, telling him how much his kindness has changed her life. He listens quietly, then says something that makes her heart skip a beat. "I made a few calls. Some people in the art world are interested in your work." She is speechless, gripping the phone as if it might disappear. He continues, telling her about a gallery owner in Los Angeles who wants to feature her paintings and an auction where collectors will bid on her work. He says he is not just buying her art, he is making sure the world sees it. After the call, she sits there staring at the wall, unable to process what just happened. Her mother kneels beside her, gripping her hands, tears shining in her eyes. "You deserve this, baby girl. You fought so hard for this." She swallows hard, nodding, but deep down she knows this is only the beginning. One afternoon, as she sits under the shade of a tree painting with quiet determination, a tall figure approaches, unnoticed at first. He studies her work. Before finally asking about her story, she looks up and recognizes the man immediately. It is Clint Eastwood standing before her. She cannot move, she cannot breathe for a second. She wonders if the chemo has made her hallucinate. But no, he is real, standing there in jeans and a buttoned shirt, his sharp eyes focused on her paintings, as if they actually mean something. She sees people around her starting to whisper, some pulling out their phones, recording everything, but she can only stay, a heart pounding in her chest. He kneels slightly to get a better look at one of her paintings, a vivid blue ocean with golden waves shimmering under a painted sun. He nods approvingly, then finally looks at her. "How much for all of them?" The words take a moment to register. She grips the paintbrush in her hand, struggling to find her voice. "All of them," she echoes, her throat dry. He nods again, patient, as if he understands that she is trying to process the moment. She looks around at her stand, the paintings stacked against each other, the ones pinned to her easel, the ones she had started but never finished. She had spent weeks here, barely selling anything. Now the Clint Eastwood is asking to buy everything she has. She does not know what price to say. Her usual paintings sell for $50, maybe $70 if she is lucky. But this is different. This is more than she ever dreamed of. She hesitates, glancing at her mother, who stands frozen a few feet away, her hands covering her mouth, eyes filled with disbelief. Before she can even speak, Clint Eastwood pulls out an envelope and hands it to her. She takes it with trembling fingers, opening it just enough to see the thick stack of cash inside, far more than she ever expected, more than she has ever held in her life. She looks back up at him, her eyes wide. "This is too much," she whispers, her voice shaking. He just gives her a small smile. "Just keep painting, kid." The words hit her harder than she expects. She bites her lip, nodding quickly, blinking away the tears that threaten to spill. She does not want to cry, not here, not in front of all these people, But the weight of everything is too much, the struggle, the fear, the endless nights, wondering if they will have enough for her next chemo session, and now this moment that feels like a dream. Clint Eastwood turns to leave, but then pauses looking at her once more. You got talent, kid? He says you shouldn't be selling paintings in a park. He pulls out his phone, taps the screen, and makes a call. Then he looks at her again. I know some people who would love to see your work. I'll be in touch. With that, he walks away, disappearing into the crowd. But the energy he leaves behind lingers. The world seems different, now bigger, brighter, full of possibilities. She clutches the envelope to her chest, looking over at her mother, who finally rushes forward, pulling her into a tight hug. Her mother is crying, whispering over and over, "You did it, baby, you did it." The news spreads fast. Social media explodes with videos of Clint Eastwood at her stand, of him buying her art, of him telling her to keep painting. People start sharing her story. A local news station picks it up, then another. Soon her phone is buzzing non-stop, messages from strangers offering support, people asking where they can buy her paintings, an email from a gallery owner who wants to feature her work. The next morning, when she returns to the park, she is not alone this time. Dozens of people are waiting for her, some holding signs, some holding cash, some just there to see the girl who made Clint Eastwood stop in his tracks. She sits down, her hands still shaking, picks up her brush, and starts to paint, because that is what she was born to do. The park falls silent as onlookers realize who he is. He listens as the girl explains her situation. He is moved by her resilience and talent. Without hesitation, he buys every painting she has, offering far more than their listed price, leaving her and her mother in tears of gratitude. But Clint Eastwood does not just buy her art and walk away. He stays for a moment, watching her mother hug her, watching the way her hands tremble as she clutches the envelope of money. He can see the weight of his struggle written all over their faces, and something in him refuses to just let this be a one-time act of kindness. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out his phone, and makes a call. The girl wipes her eyes, trying to regain her composure, still struggling to believe what just happened. She hears him speaking in a low voice, though she cannot make out the words. After a few moments, he nods to himself, then looks at her. You got somewhere to be later today, kid? She blinks, confused. No, she stammers, not really. Why? He gives her a small smile. How about you and your mom meet me at the Westwood Art Gallery at 6? I think it's time more people see what you can do. Before she can even process his words, he gives her a nod, tips his hat slightly, and walks away, disappearing into the growing crowd. Her mother grabs her shoulders, still in shock. Did Clint Eastwood just invite you to an art gallery? She whispers, her voice shaky. I think so, the girl breathes, staring after him, as if he might reappear at any moment. They rush home to get ready, neither of them quite sure what to expect. She puts on her best dress, simple but clean, while her mother smooths her own hair, trying to look presentable despite the exhaustion that never seems to leave her eyes. At exactly 6 p.m., they step into the Westwood Art Gallery, and the girl stops dead in her tracks. Her paintings are there, displayed on easels under bright lights, framed like masterpieces, and surrounding them are people, real art collectors, business owners, journalists, all murmuring in appreciation. She grips her mother's hand, too overwhelmed to speak. Clint Eastwood is already there, standing with the gallery owner, a distinguished-looking woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. When she notices the girl, she walks over, extending a hand. I am Evelyn Hart, owner of this gallery. May Eastwood showed me your work, and I must say I am beyond impressed. She gestures toward the paintings. We have already had buyers interested in your pieces. Would you be willing to put more up for sale? The girl swallows hard, barely able to process this. Yes, yes, of course, she manages, her voice trembling. Wonderful, Evelyn says smoothly. We will set you up with representation and ensure you get the recognition you deserve. Your work has heart, and people respond to that. As the night goes on, she meets collectors, critics, even a magazine editor who wants to do a feature on her. She stands beside Clint Eastwood, the man who changed her life with a single act of kindness, and he watches it all unfold with a knowing smile, as if he had seen this coming all along. At the end of the night, when the gallery has started to empty, he turns to her and says quietly, You remind me of someone, a fighter, someone who doesn't quit no matter what happens. He nods approvingly. You keep that spirit, and you'll go far, kid. She stares at him, unable to find the right words. Thank you feels too small for what he has done, for what this night means. Instead, she does the only thing she knows how. She pulls out her sketchbook, quickly flipping to a blank page, and starts to draw. Within minutes, she captures his likeness, the sharp lines of his face, the quiet strength in his expression. She tears the page out and hands it to him, her heart pounding as he looks at it. His lips twitch into a smile. Damn good, he mutters, folding the paper carefully and slipping it into his pocket. Before he turns to leave, he glances back one last time. Just keep painting, kid. The night at the gallery changes everything. The girl wakes up the next morning to find her phone flooded with messages, emails from art collectors, social media notifications from strangers praising her talent, requests from journalists wanting to interview her. She stares at the screen, barely able to believe it. Her mother stands behind her, a hand on her shoulder, her voice thick with emotion. This is really happening, baby girl. This is your moment. She barely has time to process before there is a knock at the door. When she opens it, a delivery man stands there, holding a large envelope. She signs for it, hands trembling. When she opens it, her breath catches. Inside is a formal invitation to a charity auction hosted by some of the biggest names in the art world. Alongside the invitation is a handwritten note from Clint Eastwood, short, simple, but powerful. Time to show them what you can do, kid. Her mother reads over her shoulder, her eyes wide. This is huge. This could change everything. The next few days are a whirlwind. She barely has time to sleep as she paints, pours every ounce of herself into each brushstroke, knowing that this is her chance. Her paintings are no longer just something she does to survive. They are a statement, proof that she is here, that she matters, that her dreams are worth something. The night of the auction, she steps into the grand hall feeling like she has stepped into another world. Chandeliers hang from the ceiling, casting golden light over the crowd. Elegant men and women move through the room, sipping wine, murmuring about the pieces on display. She clutches her mother's hand, fighting the overwhelming feeling that she does not belong here. But then she sees him, Clint Eastwood, standing near a group of collectors, nodding in her direction, a silent reminder that she earned this moment. As the auction begins, her paintings are unveiled one by one, each piece telling a story of struggle, resilience, and hope. She watches in disbelief as the bids climb higher than she ever imagined. Her heart pounds as she hears numbers she never thought she could associate with her art: 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. When the final piece is presented, the one she painted after that first life-changing day in the park, an intense, breathtaking swirl of colors, symbolizing the chaos and beauty of the moment, the bidding war explodes. 20,000, 30,000, finally $40,000. The room erupts in applause. She covers her mouth as tears spill down her cheeks. As the auctioneer announces the final sale, she glances toward Clint Eastwood. He nods once, approval in his eyes, before turning back to his conversation. After the event, she finds herself surrounded by collectors, business owners, even celebrities who want to meet the young artist whose story has captivated the world. She shakes hands, smiles for photos, but through it all, she keeps glancing toward the door, toward the exit, where she once stood alone trying to sell paintings for $50. When the crowd finally thins, she steps outside into the cool night air, trying to steady her racing heart. She hears footsteps behind her and turns to see Clint Eastwood approaching, his hands in his pockets. That was one hell of a night, he says, his voice calm, but there is something in his expression, something like pride. She nods, wiping at her eyes, still overwhelmed. I don't even know how to thank you, she says quietly. He chuckles, shaking his head. You already did, kid. You kept painting. He pulls something from his jacket and hands it to her. It is the sketch she gave him at the gallery, now framed. She stares at it, her throat tightening. Figure I should frame this, he says with a small smirk. Never know, might be worth something someday. She lets out a soft laugh, shaking her head before looking at him with all the gratitude in the world. I won't stop, she promises. No matter what happens, I'll keep painting. Good, he says with a nod. Then he steps back into the night, leaving her standing there, holding the framed drawing, knowing without a doubt that this is only the beginning. The morning after the auction, she wakes up to a reality that feels almost surreal. The world knows her name. Now her paintings are no longer just something she sells in the park to scrape by. They are valuable sought after, collected by people who believe in her talent. Her mother sits across from her at the kitchen table, still looking dazed as she flips through a stack of letters, emails, and messages from gallery owners, collectors, even a few celebrities, all asking about her work. Baby girl, this is unreal, her mother whispers, shaking her head as she holds up one letter. This is from a museum. They want to feature you in an exhibit. She stares at the letter, her mind spinning. She went from begging strangers to buy her art for $50 to being asked to showcase in a museum in a matter of weeks. How does she even process that? Her phone buzzes again, another unknown number. She hesitates before answering. Hello. A warm, familiar chuckle comes through the line. You're getting used to this yet, kid? Her heart skips. She grips the phone tighter. Clint Eastwood has been checking in on her since the auction, not often but just enough to remind her that he is still watching, still rooting for her. I don't think I'll ever get used to this, she admits, laughing a little. He hums thoughtfully. You'll learn. He pauses, then adds, I have one more favor to ask of you. Her stomach tightens slightly. Anything, she says without hesitation. I want you to come to Law. There's someone I want you to meet, he says. Law, she echoes, blinking. Yep, he says, simply be there by Friday. I'll send details. Then he hangs up before she can even think of questioning him. The next few days move in a blur. She and her mother pack their bags, board a plane for the first time in their lives. She stares out the window as the city below grows smaller, her mind racing with possibilities. Who does Clint Eastwood want her to meet? Why is he still helping her? Why does he care so much? When they land, a car is already waiting for them. They are driven through the streets of Los Angeles, past towering billboards, luxury stores, and flashing lights. Everything feels bigger, louder, faster than the world she knows. They arrive at a sleek glass building, a private studio. She steps inside, her breath catching as she takes in the walls lined with paintings, some from legendary artists, others from names she does not recognize, but all of them powerful, moving, alive. Clint Eastwood is already there, standing beside an older man in a charcoal suit with sharp eyes and a quiet presence. The moment she steps forward, Clint nods at her, then turns to the man. This is the kid I was telling you about, he says. She's got something special. The man studies her for a long moment, then gestures for her to follow. They walk through the gallery in silence until they reach a large empty canvas on an easel. He turns to her. Show me, he says simply. She hesitates, feeling the weight of the moment, but then she picks up a brush, her fingers steady as she presses it to the canvas and begins to paint. She forgets about the older man watching, about Clint Eastwood standing nearby, about everything except the colors, the movement, the story she wants to tell. When she finally steps back, she realizes she has been painting for hours. Her hands are sore, her clothes are stained with streaks of blue and gold and red. She turns to the man, suddenly nervous, waiting for his reaction. He stares at the painting, then at her, then back at the painting. Finally, he nods, a slow, approving nod. You belong here. Her breath catches in her throat. She looks at Clint, who just smirks, his eyes gleaming with something close to pride. Told you, kid. She stands frozen, the weight of those words sinking into her skin. You belong here. She has spent so much of her life fighting just to be seen, just to survive. And now this, a man she has never met, a man who clearly holds power in the art world, just told her she belongs here. Her mother stands near the entrance, hands clasped over her chest, eyes shining with tears. She doesn't speak. But she doesn't have to. Her expression says everything. This is what she always wanted for her daughter, a future where she doesn't have to struggle, where she doesn't have to choose between her dreams and survival. The older man steps forward, offering his hand. I'm Leonard Michaels, art director of the Western Foundation. We work with young, undiscovered artists, help them build careers, develop their talent, connect them with collectors and galleries. He glances at Clint Eastwood, who stands quietly watching before turning back to her. Clint, tells me you've been painting since you could hold a brush. She nods, gripping her paint-streaked hands together. Yes, sir, my mom used to say I would draw on the walls before I could even talk. A faint smile crosses his face. Good, because what you just did on that canvas is more than skill, it's passion, it's raw, it's powerful. He gestures toward her painting. People spend their whole lives trying to create something that moves people like this? Does he tilts his head watching her reaction? Tell me something, why do you paint? The question catches her off guard. She looks down at her hands, thinking for a moment before she answers, because it's the only time I feel like myself. When I paint, nothing else matters, not the bills, not the hospital visits, not the fear she swallows hard, I just feel free. Leonard nods as if he expected that answer. Good, because art isn't just about talent, it's about truth. And you have that. He crosses his arms. Now the real question is, what do you want to do with it? She hesitates. She has spent so long just trying to survive, she never really thought about what came after. The dream was always vague, distant, just a flicker of hope in the back of her mind. Now it is real, and she has to decide. I want to show the world what I see, she says. Finally, I want my paintings to mean something, to help people the way art helped me when I was sick, when I felt alone. She looks at her mother, then back at Leonard. I want to make a difference. His lips curled into a slow, approving smile. Then let's make that happen. The next few days move faster than she can process. Leonard introduces her to curators, gallery owners, art critics, people who have spent their lives in this world, a world she never thought she would be part of. Offers start coming in, exclusive contracts, gallery showcases, even brand deals. Her head spins with the possibilities. One night, as she sits on the balcony of her hotel staring at the city lights, Clint Eastwood steps outside beside her, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He leans against the railing, watching her for a moment before he speaks. You're handling all this pretty darn well, kid. She laughs, shaking her head. I don't think I am. It still doesn't feel real. He nods as if he understands, because he does. He's been in her shoes, in a way, a kid with a dream, trying to figure out what comes next. He sips his whiskey, then looks at her seriously. Fame, money, success. It's a lot, but don't forget why you started painting in the first place. Don't let them turn you into something you're not. She meets his gaze, seeing the quiet wisdom in his eyes. I won't, she promises. Good, he says with a smirk, because you got a hell of a lot more to paint before this story is over. The night air is cool against her skin as she leans on the balcony, the weight of everything pressing against her chest, not in a bad way, but in a way that reminds her just how much her life has changed. A few weeks ago, she was selling paintings in the park, praying someone would notice her work, and now she is here in Los Angeles with offers that could change her future forever. Her mother steps outside, wrapping a light sweater around herself. Her eyes are filled with that same mix of pride and disbelief she has carried since the night Clint Eastwood first appeared at the park. She stands next to her daughter, silent for a moment before finally speaking. Baby girl, this is your moment. She knows it is. She can feel it deep in her bones. But there is something else, a nervous energy, a question she has not been able to shake. What if this all disappears just as quickly as it came? What if she wakes up tomorrow and it was all just a dream? Her mother seems to sense the doubt, and she reaches for her daughter's hand, squeezing it firmly. Listen to me. You fought too hard to get here. This is real, and you deserve it. No matter what happens next, you earned this. Her chest tightens with emotion. She grips her mother's hand a little tighter, grounding herself in the truth of her words. The next morning, she meets with Leonard again, this time in his office, where the walls are lined with paintings from artists who started just like her, unknown, unnoticed, until someone believed in them. He sits across from her, sliding a contract across the desk. This is an official offer for a full mentorship with the Western Foundation. If you sign this, we'll help you get your own studio, connect you with buyers, and ensure that your art is not just a moment in the spotlight, but a lasting career. She stares at the paper, her hands trembling slightly. She can feel the weight of it, the significance. This is what she has dreamed of, but also what terrifies her the most. What if I'm not ready, she asks hesitantly. What if I mess this up? Leonard smiles, leaning back in his chair. Every great artist has that fear, kid. The ones who succeed are the ones who paint through it anyway. She exhales slowly, then reaches for the pen, her heart pounding as she signs her name at the bottom of the page. The moment the ink dries, she feels something shift inside her. Not fear, not doubt, but certainty. She belongs here. That night, Clint Eastwood invites her and her mother to dinner. It's nothing extravagant, just a quiet place off the beaten path, the kind of place where people don't bother asking for autographs. He listens as she tells him about signing the contract, nodding with approval between sips of his drink. Told you you had something special, kid, he says. She grins, shaking her head, still trying to wrap her mind around the fact that this man, a legend in his own right, saw something in her when no one else did. Why did you help me? She asks finally. I mean, really, you didn't have to. You could have just walked past my stand that day. He watches her for a long moment before answering. When I was starting out, no one believed in me. Either I got a lot of doors slammed in my face, but I kept going because someone finally gave me a chance. He leans forward, resting his elbows on the table. I don't help just anyone, kid, but you reminded me of what it means to fight for something real. Her throat tightens at his words. She nods slowly, understanding now that this was never about charity. It was about recognition, about seeing something in someone that they might not even see in themselves yet. When dinner ends and they step outside, he hands her a small box. She frowns, glancing at him before opening it. Inside is a silver pen, sleek and elegant, engraved with the words, "Just keep painting." She swallows hard, running her fingers over the engraving before looking up at him. Every artist needs the right tools, he says with a smirk. Consider it a reminder. She blinks quickly to keep the tears at bay, nodding once. I won't forget this, I promise. I know you won't, he says, then tips his hat and walks away, disappearing into the night, just like he did that first day in the park. But this time she doesn't feel like she's watching a stranger leave. She feels like she's saying goodbye to a mentor, a friend. And as she stands there under the streetlights, clutching the pen in her hand, she knows without a doubt this is just the beginning.